Okay, so I was going to wait until the rain kind of died down, but it seems to just be getting heavier and heavier. And my venerable friend said that it could last all day and all night. And we're running out of time. Remember? Not just retreat time, but running out of time. So yes, we've got to develop the Samvega. So if you had a choice, how would you like to die? Okay, no pain. Yeah. In your sleep. So basically, we just don't want to be around for our death, right? Yeah. Sumita. Just die in your sleep. That's what everyone wants, right? Yeah. In meditation, very nice. Yes. With full awareness, right? With peaceful mind, die with a peaceful mind, yeah. So unfortunately, we don't get to choose the way that we die. And so this is a kind of grim reality that people in like the healthcare field, for example, emergency services, this is something that they know. And there are many ways to die. And there's a bit of a taboo around talking about death. So I'm always very careful to kind of make sure we couch it in terms that are, you know, in ways that are meaningful without being offensive or without being alarmist. I don't want anyone to freak out after coming on this retreat and kind of run away. And he just talked about death the whole time. And I know that death is a topic that can kind of trigger people and re-traumatize people. And so I want to couch it in, you know, terms where we're thinking about this in a spiritual way. But death is also sometimes quite hilarious as well. You know, people, they die in the most bizarre ways. And I don't know if you've heard about the Darwin Awards. Have you ever heard about the Darwin Awards? So we know who Darwin was, right? The person who came up with the theory of evolution. So a Darwin Award is what you get when you remove yourself from the gene pool. And so there's a website, I don't know if it still exists. There's a bunch of people who used to get together every year and look through all the ways that people died and select a winner for the Darwin Award. Because people die in the most bizarre ways. Do you want to hear one of them? Yeah? So there was a person who used to manufacture drugs. And he would manufacture amphetamines, and so he was always high. And, you know, these places, they don't have like proper production facilities, so he was just at home. He had like a little home lab set up. And because he was always high, he would always chew gum, because when people are high on amphetamines, they want to chew. Their jaw needs to move a lot. Anyway, so he'd always chew gum, and he never really ate, because people, when they're high on amphetamines, they don't have an appetite. And so instead of eating, he had some ascorbic acid. It's like that, you know, that vitamin C. Yeah. And so from time to time, he'd just be chewing his gum, and the gum would get dry, and so he'd put it in the ascorbic acid to kind of reflavor it and kind of keep going. But he also had other powders as part of his drug making. And one of these powders was explosive. And so he accidentally dabbed his gum in this powder, put it in his mouth, and the action of chewing blew his head off. And you have a little chuckle. I mean, this poor person, he actually was a person, but at the same time, it's like you can't write this stuff, yeah? And so people die in all manner of ways, and the Darwin Awards are full of these bizarre deaths that could not have been predicted. And I'm sure that all of the people who died in these ways also wanted to die peacefully in their sleep, unaware, pain-free. But alas, this is not what always happens. So sometimes when I think about my own death, I know the kinds of deaths that I want to avoid. Right? So do you probably. There's probably some sort of fear of something inside of you. It could be spiders, could be water, could be fire, it could be anything. And then there's, some ways that I wouldn't mind going if I had to. Asteroid strike, for example. And I'm just remembering for some reason a dictionary. It's called the Hypochondriac's Dictionary. You know what a hypochondriac is? It's someone who obsesses about having an illness. And the title of the Hypochondriac Dictionary, subtitle, A Disease for Every Symptom. And so it's like, you open this page and you kind of get you look up your symptom and you get a list of diseases that you might have. And the next sutta that we're looking at reminds me of this kind of approach. And this is the Mindfulness of Death I've got it on my page 7. I don't know if it's the same for you. The Mindful of Death, the second one. And this is from the Anguttara Nikaya 8. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Sumita, because this is a common idea in Buddhism, that the last moment really matters. I think that the mind at death might be important, but not as important as the way you lived your life. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if at death you could just compose your mind after living a horrid life of wretched, miserable deeds to others and hurting people, and then at the end just give yourself a little bit of love, and that wouldn't seem like the kind of Buddha's idea of what karma is. So this idea comes from the later commentaries and I think the Abhidhamma, this mind moment at death. But the Buddha, when he talked about death, he talked about people needing to lead good lives and that the things they do in life really matters. So it would be easy if we could do, as other religions do, just kind of confess our sins at death, and that would be it. But I think another thing that happens is, people talk about their life flashing before their eyes and the things that they've done to others also flashing before their eyes, regret. So these are the kinds of things that might happen at death. And this is why it's so important to live a life without regret. Avipatisaro, without regret. And so that we don't have a mind that is burdened by these things. And so whilst we're alive and well and healthy, we should make amends with others, right? For anything that we've done to harm them. So that they know and that we can have some closure from that. We should be generous and kind while we're alive. You can't wait until you die. Give it away while you're alive. Then you know that it's gone, that you've given away and you've seen the results of your generosity. Be a good person while you're alive. This is the opportunity. It's too late on your deathbed to suddenly pretend that you're pure and virtuous if you've not been like that. Yeah, and that's something that we recommend that people do when they're passing. We encourage them to firstly make peace with the past, and secondly turn their mind to all the good that they've done and to reflect upon their good qualities, their generosity, the merit that they've made, to help inspire the mind. And hopefully if they've led a good life, they'll have a lot to draw upon. I mean, sure, if you want to write it down and have it for reference, that's great. As long as that's how you're going to die, in a hospital bed with your diary, but we can't predict this stuff, right? And so we could die in many different ways and not have that opportunity. So one other important thing is this fear of death in the moment of death. And so the enlightened beings are said to have no fear of death. They don't fear the rebirth because they've cut through that cycle of rebirth. And the non-returners are bound for a heavenly realm. The stream enterers are destined to come out of suffering in that way. And so they've overcome this fear of death. And if we live a good life, then we should also have much less fear about death. And if we understand that this is a normal, natural process that we have no control over, then we can also abandon some of that fear. And so that's why acceptance of the reality of death, the truth of death, is so important. Because you hear, and I've seen also, people struggling with this truth, that even in the moment of their own death, they are fighting against it. And so I don't think that would be a particularly good death. But anyway, let's look at this sutta where we deal with some of the issues that we've just been talking about. At one time, the Buddha was staying at Nadaka in the brick house. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. When mindfulness of death is developed and cultivated, it's very fruitful and beneficial. It culminates in the deathless and ends with the deathless. So remember, deathless here is a synonym for nibbana. So when we see this word deathless, really how we should read it is birthless. So it's not an eternal state of living forever, but rather there is no death because there is no birth. Is that clear? It's an important doctrinal point. And how is mindfulness of death developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial, to culminate in the deathless and end in the deathless? As day passes by and night draws close, a mendicant reflects, I might die of many causes. A snake might bite me. A scorpion or centipede might sting me. And if I died, it would stop my practice. Or I might stumble off a cliff, or get food poisoning, or suffer a disturbance of bile, phlegm, or piercing winds. Or I might be attacked by humans or non-humans, and if I died from that, it would stop my practice. That mendicant should reflect, are there any bad, unskillful qualities that I haven't given up, which might be an obstacle for me if I die tonight? So we've already looked at the 5 frequent reflections, right, of old age, sickness, death, separation, and karma. And so here, the Buddha seems to be exhorting us to really hone in on this reflection of the certainty of death. And I mentioned that hypochondriac's dictionary because it's like, this is the kind of mindset, right? Like, well, I could step out this door. What dangers, what future perils await me outside? I could just slip over in the rain and smash my head. I could get in my car and have an accident. A tree branch could fall on my head and kill me. So this, of course, could end up being a little neurotic if we're not careful, right? We might end up thinking that the right thing to do is just stay at home, hide under the desk and never go out. But this isn't what the Buddha is suggesting we do. He's not suggesting that we need to wear hard hats and knee pads and whatever to try to survive the world. He's just saying death could happen at any time. And how? How is your mind? Are you ready to die? Have you got anything that you would regret in your mind? And so here we use the word unskillful qualities. What kind of things do we mean by unskillful qualities? What do you think? Ill will? Yeah? Anyone else? Ill will? Ill will is a bad, unskillful quality. What other bad, unskillful qualities? Yes, not practicing our precepts. What about just like the 3 broad ones, greed, hatred, and delusion, right? That's kind of one place we could start. And so there's lists of things in the Buddhist doctrines about what are unskillful qualities, the kilesas, and there's many, many, many. We also have the samyojanas, we have the anusayas, we have the nivaranas, the hindrances. We have many different ways to look at these unskillful, unwholesome, unhelpful, bad qualities that might be in our minds. So remember the Buddha's exhortation to come out of all unskillful, evil, bad qualities and to cultivate good qualities and purify the mind. So this is his instruction to us. And so I can give you a list of, the defilements. But it might not be very helpful to you. what might be helpful is for you to take a few moments and think, what are the qualities in my mind that I need to give up? What are the things that cause me suffering in my life? Craving, yeah. Clinging. It could even just be things like not getting along with my partner, or having a bad attitude, or being mean to the waiter or bus driver. You know, it could just be things that you think about yourself. What have I done today that maybe wasn't very skillful or good? Thinking at the end of your day, how did I live my life today? Did I hurt anyone? Did I lie? Did I say something to divide people? Did I take something that I shouldn't have? So it doesn't matter what kind of long list of defilements we can find out through our research. What really matters is for you to look at your own mind and to evaluate the things that are causing you and others suffering in your life. And if there's things in your mind that are causing you and others suffering, don't you want to abandon them? Let them go? Stop repeating them? Stop hurting yourself or others? And so this is what the Buddha is doing here. He's asking the monks to evaluate themselves. And the reason for that evaluation is because death can come at any time. You might not survive the night. Suppose that upon checking, a mendicant knows that there are such bad, unskillful qualities. Then, in order to give them up, they should apply intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness. So those last two, sati, sampajanya. So these are pretty inspiring ideas, right? That we should have intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness to overcome those bad qualities in our mind. So in like psychological terms, we're not just going to allow them to sit there and do nothing and kind of feel bad or guilty or ashamed. We're going to try to do something to work on them, to overcome them. And so this is how we purify our mind. Incrementally, day by day, seeing our actions, seeing our speech, seeing our thoughts clearly. This is why we develop mindfulness, so that we know what's going on. And then, once we've seen what's going on, we should have some discernment about what's happening. We should understand what things lead to bad results and what things lead to good results. What things are unskillful, what things are skillful. What things cause harm, what things cause us to come out of suffering. So we need to evaluate our actions in this way so that we can abandon those things that don't serve us or others and cultivate things that do. So this, if you cast your mind back to, was it only yesterday? Where we talked about right effort. So this is our right effort, right? That we actually need to participate in the purification of our mind We need to put forth effort to overcome those unskillful, unwholesome qualities. We need to put forth effort to develop those wholesome and skillful qualities. And so this kind of daily reflection that the Buddha seems to be asking the monks to do here is part of that process. Is this something you do in your life? Before you go to bed, do you think, how have I lived my life today? Do you take these moments to reflect? I think most people don't. And so we just kind of like stumble blindly through our life, making mistakes, maybe not really reflecting on them, doing unskillful actions, maybe not aware. And then we're fettered by the shame or the guilt. We repress and suppress these things. We spiritually bypass, which is a talk I could give another time. And we actually need to look very clearly at our mind to see what's going on, and it can be quite uncomfortable. But that's what the Buddha is suggesting that we do here. How should we do it? So we need all that perseverance, that zeal, that effort. Suppose your clothes or head were on fire. So again, the Buddha, with a masterful simile here. In order to extinguish it, you'd apply intense enthusiasm, effort, zeal, vigor, perseverance, mindfulness, and situational awareness. Your head is on fire. Have you seen images? You've seen images of people who've accidentally been set alight at some concert or something, and their hair goes up, and they're applying that kind of effort and zeal. This is the kind of effort the Buddha says that we should have. In the same way, in order to give up those bad, unskillful qualities, that mendicant should apply intense enthusiasm, etc. But suppose that upon checking, a mendicant knows that there is no such bad, no unskillful qualities. Then that mendicant should meditate with rapture and joy, training day and night in skillful qualities. And so this is the flip side, that when the mind is free of defilements, when the mind is free from suffering, all that remains is happiness, joy, bliss, good qualities. And there's a beautiful term, one of my favourite Pali words, anavajja sukha, the bliss of blamelessness. And so at the end of the day, if you've got this idea about yourself that is based in reality, actually, I've been a pretty good person today. I haven't hurt anyone. I didn't lie. I didn't steal anything. I didn't divide people with my speech. I brought them together. I did good actions. Actually, I feel pretty good. This, the Buddha said, is a kind of bliss. Being blameless is blissful. And it feels good. This is something that we develop sometimes on our retreats. We're restrained by the precepts. We're not getting into trouble. We're in a place surrounded by good people supporting us to practice. And at the end of the day, you look back and you haven't had any office politics or fights. You haven't had to interact with the family. You haven't had a bad conversation with your partner. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just feel so good. so pure. And your heart is light. You're unburdened by these kinds of qualities that otherwise weigh you down. And that's that kind of lightness that comes through training the mind and by developing those good qualities and abandoning those unskillful qualities. This transforms the mind. And it's beautiful. And so then when you come to sit in meditation, your mind isn't obsessed by all of these things that you said or did or that happened. Your mind just settles very quickly because it is already well positioned to develop that bliss of meditation, because there's nothing impeding that bliss from arising. And you feel good about yourself. You walk around and you're like, yeah, I'm a good person. And so in Buddhism, we're allowed to reflect upon our good qualities and encouraged to reflect upon our good qualities because it inspires us to keep on practicing good qualities. It's like a positive feedback loop. We get the good results, say, of being generous or kind. We feel good about ourselves. Other people like us. Sweet. So we think, oh, I'll do that more often. And then we reflect upon it. We feel even better. We get a lot of joy in our heart. And this is how it works. And so the Buddha encouraged us to reflect upon our good qualities. He encouraged us to encourage other people's good qualities too. And so that's the kind of practice that we can do. We can do this daily reflection of investigating our mind, encouraging ourselves to let go of these unwholesome, unskillful qualities, encourage us to cultivate wholesome and skillful qualities. And then, when it comes time for us to die, we have no regrets. We're not worried. If you don't believe in rebirth, then you've lived a good life. You can die happy. If you do believe in rebirth, then you've got nothing to fear in your coming life. You've lived a good life. You've made merit. You've cultivated good qualities. And you'll experience the benefits of those qualities in the future. So this is a useful practice. Who knows when death will come? So we should get ready here and now. And that's why we need this Samvega. That's why we need this spiritual urgency, so that our practice doesn't get wasted, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for a better time. We need to practice now. This is when we have the opportunity to practice the Dhamma. Now, who knows when we might lose that opportunity by getting bitten by a scorpion or centipede, or stumbling off a cliff, or getting food poisoning, or getting a disturbance of bile, phlegm, or piercing winds, or getting attacked by humans or non-humans. Because if you died from that, you would stop your practice. And so the sutta goes on to once again exhort us to practice like our head is on fire. And this is why the Buddha says, mindfulness of death, when developed and cultivated in this way, is very fruitful and beneficial. It culminates in the deathless and ends with the deathless, that is, nibbana. And so there's just another exhortation to keep death in mind and to practice well. And also a good idea for incorporating into your daily practice, right? Like just before bed, you think, okay, well, I may not survive the night, but how have I lived today? And is there anything that I should not do tomorrow? And are there things that I should do tomorrow? And kind of just keep evaluating like this, or reflecting upon your good qualities. It's a very useful way to actually bring the theory of the practice into an actual lived practice of spirituality. And I think it's useful sometimes to become this kind of spiritual practitioner that is engaged and reflective and participating in their own spiritual path, rather than kind of going along a little bit unmotivated, uninspired, a little bit detached from your own practice. And so in this way we kind of bring our spiritual practice from the periphery of our life into the center, and we make it an active and ongoing part of our day, rather than, that thing that we do twice a year, we go on retreat. So you can't expect much progress in that way. It's much better to integrate it into our life. So that's just a few words on Mindfulness of Death Sutta. And now we have some free time. Yes?
Isn't the intense effort some sort of willpower?
Yes, so Venerable was asking, is this kind of intense effort, does it sound a little bit like willpower? And so, but one of our shared teachers, Ajahn Brahm, he's often saying, don't use force, don't use will. But he says it at a particular time about a particular stage of meditation practice. And by the time he kind of wants you to stop using too much will, you've already made it onto the cushion. And Ajahn Brahm talks in one of his books about the amount of effort it takes to get onto the cushion. And he says sometimes meditation will be the hardest thing you've ever done, and it requires so much effort to do it. And so the Buddha, he often encouraged people to use a lot of effort and energy to, in his last words, he encouraged people to strive on, practice hard, because otherwise we really quickly become quite slack. I don't know if you've noticed. It's quite easy to just kind of coast along and not actually do the work. Even for monastics, we have really good conditions, and you can lose that zest, you can lose that enthusiasm. You need to re-inspire the mind and recharge the mind. And the same certainly for the lay community. You'll have to work out ways that you can really introduce the practice into your life in a really deep and meaningful way, so it doesn't become just like a social thing that you do, or a ritualistic thing you just do 3 times a year, or something that's very nominal. So we need to constantly, just like with everything in our life, we need to reinvent our relationships with our family, reinvent our relationships with our spouse, our partner. And in the same way, we need to reinvent and renew and rejuvenate our relation with our spiritual practice as well. And so sometimes you'll need some effort. At other times, you can just chill out and enjoy the fruits of your practice. But you need to also know when. to apply that effort and when to relax. And so I guess that would be wisdom. Okay, we better finish up. So there's some interviews at 5 o'clock. I don't know if there's any spaces left on the sheet, which is at the back of the room. There's still a few spaces left, maybe? Yeah, so if you want to put your name down for a 10-minute interview about practice, you can do that. If you would like to have an anonymous question, you can write down a question at the table at the back of the room there. Or if you have a comment or something you want to share, you can also do that. And we'll come back here at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Very good. For our death contemplation. Okay, so enjoy. Please keep practicing. Do some walking meditation, do some sitting meditation, and I'll see you at 7 o'clock.